Well, hello, In the Growth Space subscribers. Thank you so much, first and foremost, for subscribing to the podcast. And no, this is not the official start to our season 4. However, this is a special episode just specifically for those of you who subscribe. So if you subscribe later or if you come across the podcast beyond the first part of September, you'll get the added bonus of this episode as well. Nonetheless, we do have some really great episodes coming up in season 4. We have conversations with people like John Berghoff, who is the founder of Exchange, and also the former national sales manager for the Vitamix Corporation. We also have a conversation with Randy Gravitt, who is an author and a business partner to one of our other guests, Mark Miller. And you've heard him twice last season. And Randy has a brand new book out. It's an amazing book, and I think you're going to really like this conversation. We also have a conversation with Malcolm Peace. So if you've ever wanted to know more about growing a company and potentially selling a company, this is going to be a great conversation. We often talk about how it's important to learn how to grow both leaders and teams and also companies. And so Malcolm is going to talk with us about that. We've got a number of other conversations coming up in season 4, and we can't wait to share those with you. Make sure that you tune in. Our season kicks off on Monday, September the 2nd. So we'll have our first episode airing on Monday, September the 2nd. But today, what I wanted to do is just share with you some lessons from my sabbatical. This is the second year that I have had this sabbatical where I've taken a month off. And I know that even by just saying that, there are some people who will say, I could never take a month off. And I get it. Up until last year, I never took a month off either. And I never took off probably more than a week, if I'm really honest, maybe 10 days at the very, very most. So taking a month off was really the catalyst for it was just some podcasts that I had been listening to. One of the leaders that I've followed for a long time, a guy by the name of Michael Hyatt, began talking about him taking the month off some years ago. And I just thought to myself, wow, that's really cool. And probably maybe even a little bit like you're thinking, I was thinking, how could I ever do that? How could I ever do that? That just doesn't even seem practical. And I thought the same thing. And I'll talk a little bit about that here in just a moment. But the why behind taking the month off is pretty, I think, an interesting story. So about 2 years ago, actually in the year 2022, so yeah, 2 years ago, I was having a conversation with my coach, Andy Hall, and who, if you've been a longtime listener, you've heard Andy here on the podcast, and you'll also hear him this season some more. We're going to have some regular conversations together. But I was talking with Andy, and I shared with him that vision of wanting to take a month off. And the first thing he said was, well, when are you going to put it into your calendar? And so after that, I gave it some thought. I put it in my calendar for July of 2023. So 2023 was actually my first sabbatical where I took some time off. And I guess the reason that I wanted to be able to take some time off, the first time was really coinciding with when I had a milestone birthday. So I think we all sit back and have some reflections when we have milestone birthdays. I didn't so much when I turned 30 or 40, but I definitely did when I turned 50. And then in 2023, when I turned 60, I had some major reflections, and I really wanted to make sure that I took some time and some space to think ahead and really think intentionally. I recognize that none of us are guaranteed tomorrow. None of us are guaranteed more than this moment right here. And so I wanted to be very intentional with the next season of my life. And after I took that sabbatical last year, I knew that I needed to take it again because there were so many things that I wanted to just revisit. And also the fact that I just got to rest and recharge and really be rejuvenated was so incredible and so enlightening. Now, I will say that my methodology this year versus last year was vastly different. Last year, I had all of these things that I really wanted to accomplish. And you'll notice that here in something I'll read to you from my journal that was really telling. I'll just share with you some of the differences, but the methodology this year was to really just give myself some thought prompts as opposed to having all of these things that I really wanted to accomplish. Now, don't get me wrong. Last year, I was able to create my vision statement. And part of my reflections this year is to go back and revisit that vision statement. And it was really a great exercise. But this year, I just wanted to not have any desired outcomes other than to rest, to think, and journal. And so I thought what I might do today is share some of my thought prompts with you. I had created an Evernote file with some thought prompts prior to the sabbatical, and I wanted to be able to share some of those with you. And I also want to just share some of my reflections, not all of them, but a couple of my reflections as I thought about those prompts. And I have my journal here. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see it's just a regular moleskin journal, and I've written a number of different pages. I didn't even count how many pages, but there were several days where I would just journal for a couple of hours at a time. But the first passage that I wanted to share with you, and I guess I better get my glasses here so that I can read my own writing. But my first official day of my sabbatical, and I basically said that it's been a little bit disconcerting and it's a little bit disorienting with all of the time freedom so far. And I mentioned that I remembered having a similar feeling last year, and I'm just wrestling with the desire to be productive and also allowing my mind to rest and recharge. And the drive to get things done is strong. And so that just kind of begins the process for me. And that was the beginning of the wrestling and the almost the disconnecting from work that I had to work through. And it was disconcerting and it was disorienting because not having a schedule in my head to kind of just keep thinking about, well, what's next and what's next and what's next, just was so unusual. And I can tell you that if you are one of those type A personalities like me and you really are an achiever, if you ever do this, that first week is going to be really, really strange. And so, but I would encourage you to wrestle through it and keep moving through it because it does get better, and it did get better. So one of the thought prompts that I thought I would just share with you, and this is a great thought prompt that you might consider sometimes at the end of the year. I have been treating my July sabbatical like my end of the year, but most people take December and usually think through their coming year and actually reflect on the prior year. So one of the things that I would just recommend is this thought prompt. And the thought prompt was, what went well over the last 12 months? And then I followed that up by and I wrote some things that I felt like really went well over the last 12 months. And then I went a bit further and I asked myself, what strengths did I notice, and what did I bring when I was at my best? And those strengths then were really insightful. It was really great for me to recognize the strengths in myself. And I think that if you do this exercise and if you go through this thought prompt, I think it'll be really helpful for you to see your strengths and to see the things that you brought to the positives of your year. So the next thing that I did was I actually reread my vision statement, my vision script from last year's sabbatical. And as I reread the vision script, the thing that I wrote here is that it still energizes me and it rings true today. I think that there may be some tweaks that I'll make to it this year, but it still excites me, still motivates me as much or more than last year. And so that was one of the things that I thought was really useful, is to be able to go back and look at what I wrote. The other thing that I noticed in just reflecting on this is that I didn't reread that as often as I could have, and maybe even as often as I want to in the future. So one of the things I'm doing is committing to rereading my vision statement at least once a week, because that will keep it forefront in my mind, and then it'll also help draw me forward into that vision. The next thought prompt that I'll offer to you is I ask myself, what am I noticing as I'm resting in my sabbatical? And there were a number of different things that I noticed. The first thing that I noticed is that I had been daydreaming more. So one of the things I wrote here is that I've been able to daydream more, and I've been able to just kind of sit and think, stare out the window, and just be intentional with allowing my mind to wander. The other thing that I noticed was the feeling of spaciousness of time. It's been a long time since I've really felt that spaciousness. And if you can even think back into your youth, you probably will recognize that the summer days seemed endless. And to me, that's what it felt like. Now here, past my sabbatical, it went so fast, but when I was in it, those days seemed like they lasted forever, and it was really enjoyable. I also found myself time traveling, and what I mean by that is, in those days where I could daydream, I'd allow my mind to time travel back to when I was a kid and ask myself, really what lit me up when I was a kid? What were some of the things that I really enjoyed doing? What were some of my passions? And then I allowed myself to time travel into the future as well. And that is one of the really cool things I think about being human, is that we can, in our mind, time travel. And I did a lot of that. I also noticed, kind of going back to what I noticed while I was resting, that I still have a drive and a passion for helping other leaders to be in this reflective state. In other words, I really have this drive to help other leaders to be able to learn how to reflect on their experience, because that's the only way we can grow, is to reflect on our experience, not just having the experience, but to reflect on it and to really ask ourselves some deep questions. I even wrote, it's just so rare that people get to really relax and think about the deeper things of life and leadership. And this sabbatical is really teaching me to do that and to sit more with my question prompts. And the other thing that I noticed is that I felt more present and really able to just go with the flow. There were a lot of different situations where I was able to just be present with the people I was with, specifically my wife, but also others, my kids and other folks that I was around. I really felt like I was present more, and I was able just to kind of go with the flow of the day. I even got to visit a 96-year-old friend of ours that was really enjoyable, just spending some time with her. I also wrote about my core values, and I asked myself, what are my core values? Now, I've done this exercise before, and I pretty much thought I knew what some of my core values were. But given the space, I allowed myself to expand on what my core values were, and even just wrote a little bit something about each one of them and why I felt like they were important to me. And I'll say that my top values weren't a surprise to me, but I'll just read them to you: freedom, family, health, growth, gratitude, discipline, love, persistence, resilience, and honoring commitments. And I think those, as I think about my life, and I think back about what's driven my behaviors, what's driven my success, and even my drive for significance, it's those things, and that would be really my top or most important core values. The next thing that I did as a thought prompt was I just asked myself, what's my purpose and reason for having this podcast? Because I knew that I wanted to be able to think about it. I wanted to think about why should I even do it? Why should I even invest the time for a podcast? And really, as I thought about the purpose for my podcast, there's probably 3 or 4 reasons why I'm doing the podcast. Number one, it's highlighting stories of growth from other leaders. And a lot of times other leaders that I want to learn from. But it's also sharing lessons from those leaders and the wisdom that they have and the success that that wisdom led to and how to maybe even recreate some of their habits, some of their behaviors in my own life and with the lives of you, the listener. I also really love amplifying the message of the impact that growth has not only on a business, but also the leaders within the business. That's exactly why I created my business, my company called Impact Leadership Consulting. And so that's why I have this podcast as well. I love to amplify and share those kinds of messages, and also the message that that growth has on the impact of businesses and people's lives within businesses. And so the other thing I guess I would think too is just to bring perspective to the diversity of leaders within the workplace today. Being able to have the diversity of thought, the diversity of perspectives is another reason why I have this podcast. I love talking with people who have a unique perspective or a unique vantage point on a certain topic. The other thing that I thought through was the reason for my weekly email. I have a weekly email, and if you're not a part of that community, I'd love to invite you to subscribe to it. If you go to the show notes, we'll have a link that you can just put in your information and subscribe to my email community. And when you do that, you'll also get a free ebook that I wrote a few years ago. And it's really all about navigating change. It's my first attempt at writing, really, at anything a little bit longer. And so it gives you some initial thoughts on how to navigate change if you're a high-performing leader. But the purpose of that weekly email really is to do some teaching of leadership and cultural fundamentals. A lot of times I use stories that pertain to businesses I'm working with, maybe even some leaders that I've encountered where I don't disclose who they are, I don't disclose the companies, but I share principles around leadership and culture and how to navigate different and difficult situations. So that's one purpose for my weekly email. Another purpose that I would have is really to stay in touch with people in my community and in the community of leaders that are really in my circle. Also my clients. So if you're a part of the email community and you're one of my clients, it's a way for me to just kind of stay in contact and be able to share a little bit more about what I'm doing. And sometimes I even have future clients. I have people who may have just come across my work and they're interested and they want to maybe know a little bit more about me. So that's a way that I can share a little bit more about myself. But then also just building relationships through sharing my own stories and maybe even sharing my own growth journey. I often will share things that I'm either trying or going through while I'm just navigating the growth path for others. And so that's another purpose for the email. And then also just to invite the members who are part of that email community to join me in any of my programs or the groups that I'm starting, if it's appropriate for them. And I just love to be able to invite them to come into the work that I'm doing. Now, one of the last prompts that I'll leave you with is, and I used this here kind of at the end of my sabbatical, and I asked this question: if I could wave a magic wand and make 3 wishes come true in the next 12 months, what would happen? And I wrote out a whole bunch of things, but the three things that would happen for me if I could wave that magic wand. And those 3 wishes would be, number 1, that I would have an increased focus on growing our impact here at Impact Leadership with the small and mid-sized company leaders, because impact is really all I'm about. I really want to be able to create significance and help those small and mid-sized business leaders, whether they're emerging leaders, whether they're the executive leaders. Sometimes it's the executive leader or the founder who's wanting to find a way to transition out. And I want to have a huge impact on those leaders, especially because it's all about their legacy. And the other thing that I would wish as well is to hold more executive retreats. I love holding those kinds of retreats and being able to facilitate those kinds of gatherings of executive leaders. And even my vision retreats. So if you're a leader and you want some one-on-one time with me in a really concentrated way, that's a way to do it. And so holding more executive retreats and vision retreats for me is another wish that would come true in the next 12 months. And then the last one, this is a little bit more vulnerable because I'm actually going to be putting something out there that it's going to hold my feet to the fire and it'll hold me accountable. But it is creating the Emerging Leader Inner Circle Academy. And essentially what that is it's a video online library of many, many lessons that I teach in the Emerging Leader Inner Circle to our Emerging Leader group and our Emerging Leader community. So that's the third wish that I have in the next 12 months. And so that thought prompt, it really sparked a lot within me. And I had a hard time capturing just the top 3 wishes, but that's where I landed. The last thing I'll say is I had a question that I asked myself on the last day of my sabbatical. And I said, what are the 3 words that characterize the month off the best? And the 3 words that I came up with were rest, reflection, and recharge. And as I think back over the month of July, it was essentially a way for me to just take a pause, to be able to reflect, to rest a lot, and really recharge my battery. I feel so enthusiastic and energized with where I am right now and the things that are pulling me forward into the future. I'm so excited about creating the Emerging Leader Inner Circle Academy. I'm so excited about doing more executive retreats. I'm excited about doing more vision retreats and really just having that increased focus on making a bigger impact. So I hope some of these thought prompts were helpful for you. If you're interested in, and these are only a few of my thought prompts. If you're interested in hearing more of those, feel free to reach out to me, david@davidmcglennon.com, and I'll be happy to send to you the whole list of them. Some of them I got to, some of them I didn't get to, but I'm going to hold them in repository for next year because I will have another sabbatical next year. So I hope that this is helpful for you. please do me a favor. If this episode was helpful for you, please shoot me a note and just let me know. I've often told people that I interact with that it's really hard to be talking into a microphone and into a camera without getting any feedback. And so if you feedback to me what you enjoyed, what was helpful, what wasn't helpful, I would love to hear that. So, hey, stay tuned for season 4. We've got some great episodes coming up here coming in the new season. So stay tuned, and we'll be back to season 4 really, really shortly.